Hello, everybody. This is Kelly Kleiman, and you are listening to the DealershipNews.com podcast, where we spotlight the who's happening in the automotive industry. It's foot soldiers, visionary salesmen, GMs, owners, service managers, and industry vendors alike. Our guest today is Mr. Greg Iverson, the Internet BDC Marketing Director at Felix Chevrolet. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Kelly. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, and I am very happy to be speaking with you this afternoon. Before we get into how cool your job is, let's talk about what got you into the car business to begin with. Was it something that you always loved? Are you a marketing guy, or did you sort of slide in the auto business organically and make the most of it?
That's a great question. You know, for years I've heard that the car industry is kind of an accidental business, and for me it was just that. I was working for Sony Records and was in Australia, bouncing back from Los Angeles to Sydney, and I met Holden reps. Holden is a General Motors car down in Australia, and I met some American guys working down there. This was 1993, and there was a certain pub that we would all frequent. It was the only place you could get cranberry juice in Sydney, and we were drinking it straight, just so everybody knows. We weren't mixing it with anything. But just over 2 or 3 months of conversing with these guys and the opportunities, I ended up signing up with General Motors, coming on board as a rep to teach people about the cars, just kind of walk-around knowledge and basics. They were going to train me. Mm-hmm. 3 months later, I moved to Sydney, and within 3 or 4 months of being on the job, and visiting 8 or 9 dealerships in the Sydney area, I had 2 or 3 owners telling me that not that I was wasting my time, but that would make more money and have more fun selling cars. So in 1994, I ended up going to a Holden group, Hunter Holden, mm-hmm. Which is in Sydney, St. Leonard's, North Sydney, 6 dealerships, and that's how I started selling Holdens in Australia.
Holy cow! Do you, or I should say, holy wombat? Do you miss Australia at all?
Yeah, I tell you what, for any American that is looking to vacation, definitely make sure you go there. But if you're ever looking for a place to live, not that I would live anywhere. I lived there for 5 years and was happy to get back. It is a fantastic place for Americans. There's a lot of American culture there. We kind of come from the same cut of cloth. And it's kind of the Americans that I met down there that were living there said it reminded them of California in the 1950s. Mm. So very clean. You really don't see homeless people, but one of the most fantastic places on earth.
Yeah, my brother-in-law lived in Perth for a while. I think he still lives there, but he works in Singapore. He opened up the Nobu in Perth. So he's a sushi guy. Yeah. So you
Perth is a fantastic city, the most isolated city in the world with over 1 million population. So it's a bit of a trek. So, but it is a beautiful place.
Sounds good to me. I wouldn't mind spending a little bit of time. We plan on that 2 years from now. We're going to be going there. Maui next year to celebrate my kids graduating from high school. Then we're going to go to Perth. So
congratulations.
Thanks. We're going to fast forward. You spent 5 years at Norm Reeves Honda, the top Honda dealer in the world, pretty much setting the bar for Internet BDC in the industry. You went on to turn a number of other dealerships around, and now you're at Felix pretty much doing the same. Talk to us about your career path and how you've turned Felix Chevrolet into the 5th fastest growing Chevrolet dealer on planet Earth.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I stayed in Australia for 5 years, pretty much stayed as a salesman, but was lucky enough to meet Tom Stuker. And Tom Stuker, has a Australian training institute in Sydney. And going to his training, I kind of hooked up with him, being the only American in the group, and was offered a job in '98 when I got back from Australia to work with him out of Hoffman Estates, Illinois. I ended up going to Toyota of North Hollywood, I live in Burbank. And I kind of put Tom off for a year or two. So when I got back in '98, Internet was kind of just starting, and my general manager, I was hired as a sales trainer, wanted me to delve into Internet, which I did. It was, I would say everything is kind of the same. It's a people business. The margins are definitely different, and the way it works is different. But from North Hollywood Toyota, I followed my GSM to the Keys Group. Spent 5 years with the Keys Automotive Group at a Toyota dealership, running Internet, and in 2008 went to Norm Reeves Honda, was recruited by them, and as you said, we used to joke it's the biggest Honda dealership left of Jupiter, doing 1,000 to 1,200 cars a month. Sure. The hit in '08 with the economy And then the following year with the tsunami, Honda took a hit on imported cars, and the market took a hit, but the store was still managing to do 800 cars a month, and spent 5 years there. From there, I went to CarPro's Kia, the largest Kia group in the country, spent 2 years there, and was recruited by Daryl Holter, the president of Downtown LA Motor Group, 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, they owned pretty much all the dealerships in downtown Los Angeles, from Nissan to Porsche and Audi and Volkswagen, and they had a Nissan dealership in Carson. And I was brought on board as kind of a platform manager for internet. And within 6 months, they decided to sell pretty much all of the stores except the Felix store to the Lithia Auto Group, which now owns the dealerships, not the land, but the land is held by the family. And 2 years ago, I came on board at Felix Chevrolet to a store that I don't want to say was left to the wayside, but the past 10 years, the Shamus Group had spent a lot of money refurbishing all the dealerships, new buildings, and Felix, in a sense, was left to the wayside. So when I got here 2 years ago, the store was really underperforming and was in a bit of a ditch.
Yeah. It's not in a ditch anymore. But before
no, sir.
Not at all. You've done a great job. But before we get into that, let's talk about when you do get into a dealership, you've been brought on for whatever reason, obviously for a turnaround. What are the essentials in creating a well-tuned internet sales department, and what does your checklist look like when you are called on to turn things around?
I guess, everybody out there listening, you have mentors and you learn along the way, and, hopefully you have some smart car people teaching you. And I was very fortunate. The people in Australia, the operators down there, were the Kaplan family, which ran Hunter Holden, and they always talked about what they said, the triple Ps: policy, processes, and people. And that kind of stuck with me. And Tom Stuker had a different version of that. But my first thing is, first thing I want to see is I want to see the policies in the store, what they implement, what they want done. Second is processes. And then finally we get to the staff, the people, and look at how those people are performing within those processes and policies. And that'll give you kind of an indicator of a few things. Maybe we don't have the right people. Maybe our process isn't right. And, definitely from what I've seen in 24 years, 25 years, is that, you really need to have all three in line for things to work.
It's the perfect segue for our next question. You talked about the three Ps: policy, processes, and people. Let's talk about people for a moment. And that would be, what kind of attention is spent on cultural diversification in your online marketing? Can you even do that in online marketing?
That's a great question. And, it's really, I guess, first of all, is going to be based geographically where you're at. I mean, America is a multicultural country. Where we are located in Los Angeles, we've been in the same place since 1955. Over the years, the demographics have changed in this part of LA. We're actually right across from USC, the college. Currently, about 75% of the people that live within 15 miles of our dealership, which is the most densely populated area in LA, 75% are Hispanic. And that can be a combination of Mexican Americans, that can be a combination of Central Americans, and then you start delving off into different things. We have advertising. 70 to 75% of our salespeople speak Spanish. 75% of our advertising is Hispanic, whether it's TV and radio. And then you kind of go into little subcultures too, because the Spanish is different in El Salvador than it is in Mexico, and you kind of have different tactics as far as language and certain words. So it gets a little bit more complicated than people think. But the one thing too is 85 to 90% of Hispanics do speak English, and I'd say a good half of them would rather speak English. So it's kind of a fine line. You're trying to cover all your bases without insulting people, but ultimately, you have to make sure that your message gets out there to everybody.
Yeah, we actually have a article and a series of articles going on about cultural diversity. And we are in the process of putting that together, both from a marketing standpoint and a hiring standpoint. And we all know that for any dealer to have success, there needs to be a cost-effective talent acquisition process in play. Obviously, you have that. I'm curious as to what system or vendor do you use to attract candidates, and what characteristics do you look for when seeking talent that can effectively execute said game plan?
Okay, another great question. Well, I mean, we've got multi-levels. All dealerships now are probably online with their HR in their store, and most of these companies, we use a company called HR Hotlink, do have the ability to do recruiting for you. I do work with a company that is GM recommended called Pros, PROS, and they do recruiting for me. And fortunately, in the last 2 years, last year we were the fastest growing Chevy dealership in the country. And this year we are fifth in the zone, which is basically 75 dealerships from Santa Barbara down to San Diego. So getting to the last point, professional salespeople, guys that are Chevy guys or gals too that are GM, experienced, they look at the top stores. In LA, you have a real class of professional salesmen. I don't want to say that bounce around a lot, but when they're looking to go to another store, they know what stores are performing. So in the past 2 years, that has helped us, basically have walk-in applications. My HR company does a great job, basically online platforms, whether it's through Monster and there's other platforms for jobs. We do that also internally with our pros recruitment. And, as far as what I'm looking for, I mean, California is pretty litigious. I have to do background checks on everybody, which is a combination of their driving record. So there's DMV checks involved. And they have to have sales license in California, which ties in the DMV again. And then ultimately we do drug testing. So, our first kind of hurdle is to make sure that those tests are passed, and then we can move on to the interviewing stage. And, depending on the store, at Norm Reeves Honda, we looked at, for the lack of a better term, green peas, people new to the industry. But we had a training, a little college where they would go for 5 or 6 days, and we had a group of trainers that spent their time doing that. So I always look at onboarding new people if it's possible. I think smaller stores, and I guess Felix in a sense would be a smaller store, it's a little bit harder for us. So I do look for GM experience. As far as language, once again, most of our business is Hispanic, but most of the Hispanics speak English. So if you don't speak Spanish, it's not, it doesn't really change anything. It's not going to kill you. Obviously, if you do speak Spanish, that's an extra asset that you have. And everybody interviews a little bit different. I like to kind of role play and go over what the job entails. And for me, it's all about driving traffic. If you're selling cars in an internet department and you're in front of your CRM and you're getting leads, really what makes it happen is your phone calls and your phone skills. So I like to do a little bit of role playing. I'll play an easy customer. I'll play a tough customer. I want to see how they handle objections, how they segue into the next area. And and checking references. It's something that I don't think a lot of people do, but it's a good thing to check references. And then I think tied into the background of the drug testing and the DMV checks gives you a pretty good indicator of somebody's character.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it is a fact that most people don't check references. It's tough to find good help, especially now in automotive, especially in certain towns. I know that a group that I just interviewed out of Colorado, out of Denver, I believe. We're discussing that issue. It's where they were. There was no employment issue whatsoever, so they have to hire from other dealerships, or they go out there and they try to find people who are newbies, basically, but have the wherewithal and the desire to kind of take a look at the opportunities that are with them and that dealership. So let's talk about media sources and which provide you with the best traffic and or leads. Who do you use? What are some of the vendors that you've brought into the dealership that you feel do a good job by you?
Well, that's another great question, sir. I'm tied to Fox Dealer. They're based out of Pasadena. I like it that they're local. Fox Dealer is a website provider. They have all aspects of my search: SEO, SEM, SEIM, pay-per-click. Being with Chevy, certain OEMs want you. Chevy does a lot of stuff with CDK. I believe they signed up Naked Lime. So it's kind of like all car manufacturers. You'll get a list of who you can work with, and generally it's all about co-op, who you can work with that's co-op, and from there you move on. I've worked with Dealer.com, I've worked with CDK, I've worked with pretty much all the big ones out there. Fox Dealer in the past 5 years has kind of become hot news in Los Angeles and on the West Coast. Their websites are, have a different feel to it. Their SEO and SEM is unbelievable. They are actually GM certified and have that co-op ability, and I think Infinity's picked them up, and also Harley Davidson. So, with 20 years of doing this, I've kind of had experience with all of them, but I really look to Fox for most of my stuff. Obviously, I have OEM leads, like I think all dealerships now are buying leads from the manufacturer, so there's a certain quota that I have to get from Chevy, and to be quite frank, they're really not that bad of leads. So as far as third-party vendors, it's kind of across the board. I tell people you're never really going to get the same closing percentages. I try to look at lead providers or third-party lead providers as kind of like a buffet. When I'm going through the buffet line, some of the stuff is going to be a little bit more expensive than the other. But ultimately I'm full, and not to expect. Yeah, ultimately, my cost per sale might be a little bit different, my cost per lead, but you're never going to find all of them. And what I want to do is I want a buffet of lead providers, because my job is, I've been told this for 20 years, to sell me all the cars for all the money with all the good CSI. So the third party's up and down. I've had good luck with cars.com in certain parts of Los Angeles, and in other parts I haven't. They're tied into the newspaper, the LA Times, so some of that'll make a difference based on subscription areas. I've dabbled with TrueCar on and off. There's some legal issues going on with TrueCar that this company really can't get involved with at this point, but I've worked with Car Gurus, who I really do like. Their used car leads and their platform and their back-end tool is really kind of whiz-bang, and I enjoy working with them. I also have Cars Direct. I do a little bit of Spy-Fi with Cars Direct. My store inherently is kind of a special finance store just because of the location. And, that is basically it.
Yeah, my question.
Oh, excuse me, Auto Trader. I'm sorry.
Really?
I'm pulling up my providers here. I do have Auto Trader. That one I kind of set it and forget it. Our general manager, who's actually an ex-used car guy and is in good with Auto Trader, kind of loves to handle that himself. And we do have the Edmunds platform. So I do enjoy Edmunds. I think Edmunds is one of the better platforms out there that that maybe has been lost in the shuffle recently.
Question about the type of traffic and the type of leads. Now, you mentioned that you're a fan of Car Gurus. We have a magazine coming out. Actually, you'll be getting it. It's going out to about 16,700 dealers, and there's a comparison between Car Gurus and Cars.com. So you might find that interesting. It's strictly based on what I consider the 6 main metrics, based on traffic onto the website and how that traffic behaves. So we took a pretty holistic look at, I'd say, about 175 car dealers, and we came down with a conclusion. But there's not that much difference between them, frankly. But here's the question. Would you prefer direct, paid, and organic traffic, or do you get better closing metrics from those third-party providers, those Cars.coms, Car Gurus, Auto Traders?
The one thing regarding organic, because of who we are, Felix Chevrolet, and we instill it into our employees, there's history in the walls. When you look at our organic numbers, they're off the chart. People are literally just going in looking specifically for us, and for a number of reasons. It's not, we have, Felix Chevrolet gear, the T-shirts, the hats. We place orders. People are ordering stuff from China. So, but as far as, it's kind of a weird mix. Our SEO and SEM work very well. Ultimately, my third-party providers are probably 2 or 3 percentage points, meaning 6, 7, 8% closing ratio compared to my pure organic stuff coming through my website and stuff coming through SoCalChevy.com.
Interesting. What about Facebook Marketplace?
Yeah, we're involved in that. We've, I got here 2 years ago, and like I said, the store was lacking in a lot of areas. One of it was Facebook. They did have a program where they were posting up pictures of people who bought cars next to the salesman, which I think is all great. But I try not to use a platform as like a hard sell. For me, I try to look at it as like I'm in somebody's backyard at a barbecue, and I'm trying to make friends.
Sure.
So we do a number of things. Because of who we are, our Felix the Cat statue is at the LA Museum for a national show, and we try to, incorporate a lot of the community stuff. We work with the local police departments. We sponsor Special Olympics down here. We sponsor events at USC. We sponsor events with the downtown LA business corridor, the Figueroa business corridor. So we try to kind of stay away from a hard sell on Facebook. But we do kind of incorporate where we just have a lot of Felix Chevrolet fans. People want to know what we're doing in the community. They want to see what new T-shirts we came out with. They do like to take a look at the new Blazer that came out with. But I would say about 75% of our content on Facebook is not directly sales related to buying a specific car.
Yeah, I look at the pictures that salesmen have where they're posing with somebody that they just sold a vehicle to, sort of as a big game display in the head of
right.
like a head display in a man cave. But nonetheless,
I mean, I remember the day where people would take the Polaroids. This is in the '90s, and put it in their workstation. And yeah, I mean, I think that stuff is effective. You know, you got somebody sitting at your desk, and they see a few hundred pictures of happy people. It can't hurt you. But I think with the diversity of Facebook and the amount of people that it reaches, there's a better way to do it.
As you gauge the efficacy of your marketing efforts, how deep a dive do you take at the analytics in determining what really works and what you perceive to be working?
Once again, sir, that's a very good question. You know, a lot of people say they look at stuff, and I've been in a lot of these, monthly ad meetings, and, a lot of people look for the numbers that they want to look for. We delve down pretty deep. Fox is their support team is really good. They come out, being that they're 12 miles away from us. My rep comes out every month, and we sit down for an hour, and we look at my spend, and we look at how much my cost per click is. So I would advise, to people. In the beginning, I had no idea what any of this stuff was, and I learned along the way for a number of reasons. One is I just wanted to know it myself. But my advice is, if you're not sure about it, have your rep explain things to you, and it is the delve or the dive is well worth it. You really want to go, and when you're spending, we're spending upwards of $22,000 a month. On all this stuff, it's well worth to look into what's working, what areas are working, where am I pulling my traffic from. Maybe I can pull back in this area and add to another. So instead of sitting in the meetings and just kind of nodding your head, agreeing with what your rep is telling you, you might want to go another way.
Are you familiar with AutoFlight by any chance?
No, sir.
They have metrics broken down like you can't believe. We're doing an article on them in our magazine. I'll send you a link. You could check them out. What they could provide for marketing purposes to any dealership is unbelievable. They know who's selling what, how many they've sold, what they're selling them for, price-wise. You know what your competitors are doing, not only other Chevy dealers, but other car dealers. It's out there. I think they get it from Urban Science, but they have an impressive array of data sets. What does the
We kind of use Vauto. Yeah, we kind of use Vauto for the used car side of that, so it'd be interesting to see how that plays on the new car side.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. Talk to me about what the dealership does to give back to the community.
This dealership, I mean, the history of this dealership could almost be a made-for-TV movie. And, I think it's actually going to be on 60 Minutes in about a year and a half. We're coming up on our 100th anniversary in 2021. So it's really interesting. But, no, it's a family-owned business. The Shamus family has owned it since 1955. And from that, they've built it into an empire. And they come from rather humble beginnings. I mean, the original owner, Nick Shamus, bought the dealership from the owners in the 50s and was curbing cars in front of his house during high school. So the kid was a born salesman. He immediately got involved with the community as far as donating to Christmas funds. The homeless problem really wasn't as bad as it was in the 50s, but I think he started the way for the daughters and Daryl Holter, who have taken over in the past 20 years. So we're involved with the LAPD, the Southwest Police Division. We donate cars to them for events. They do these runs every year, Baker to Las Vegas. We donate vehicles for their police officers. We're involved with the LA Car Show, which actually the original owner, Winslow Felix, was one of the originators of the LA Car Show over 100 years ago. And, Daryl, our CEO and president, always talks about the only reason we're here is because of our community. These people come in and spend money with us, and we have to make sure we take care of them. So, we are really all over the place. We're getting ready to do a golf tournament, once again, Southwest Police Division over in Rancho Cucamonga. We go out there at 7 in the morning and 2 days of golf for the police officers. The Special Olympics we just finished about 2 months ago. We're involved with USC. The students, the fraternities and the sororities have these events on campus where it's kind of it can be anything from a book fair. Last year they did like a book fair tied into a Harry Potter costume event. We donated cars. For the event we do a raffle. So, being where we're at in downtown Los Angeles, I just mentioned it a few minutes ago, our Felix the Cat statue, one of the originals in our showroom, is at the Italian American Museum. We donate money to the museum down there for a number of events, and the owners are truly philanthropists in many ways.
Why do I suddenly feel like buying a car from you?
Sir, don't worry. We can work that out for you.
I'm sure you can.
Well, I got into this business for a number of reasons, but it's really a people business. So, going back to the interview process, you got to be into. I mean, cars is one thing, but you have to be into, talking to people and having a conversation and having it be real. And sir, if you bought a car for me, I promise it, I take care of you. Okay, no worries.
I do believe that. I'm not so satisfied with the last couple folks I bought a car from. I'll just tell you that. I might be looking for a pickup here soon. I'll let you know. Hey,
it's funny. My mom's 75, and I sent her out last year to go shopping, and she called me about 2 dealerships in, and she goes, "Now I know why you do pretty good." I go, "Why?" And she goes, "These car salesmen, they keep wanting my phone number, and I'm telling them no." So as I tell people, we don't have people from Stanford or MIT knocking down our doors.
Yeah.
It really is kind of an accidental business, and I think if you have a combination of good people skills and you're genuine and you're willing to work, you'll do fine.
Yeah. Where do you see the automotive business in 10 years? Will the percentage of online sales match or exceed on-site sales by then? Any idea?
That's an interesting question. I get asked that a lot. I mean, other than how things are going to be, what cars are going to be around? Are they all going to be, hydrogen? Are they going to be electric? Or, I think one thing is that you're probably going to see less number of dealerships. I think that you're going to see bigger and bigger groups buying up stores and maybe making it less competitive. It seems to be happening in LA, where you had, the '08 crash was kind of it, where you had, 50 GM dealerships within 30 square miles, and now there's maybe 22.
Right.
And I think with devices, I mean, for me, it's and I tell my retail guys this, 95% of your customers have been online. They just have not submitted a lead. So pretty much everybody is shopping online. The number, I think, is going to change in a sense. I think like Roadster is one of the companies out there that's kind of interesting, and Drive.com. Logistically, doing this online business where you're at home, companies like Carvana, I am skeptical about that, and I think it's for a number of reasons. One is liability. If all 30 of my deliveries, on a Saturday meant that I had to send people to somebody's houses, there's going to be an accident every now and then. So or the car, maybe there's something wrong, and then they got to come back. I think the way it's set up now, where people want to come in, they want to kick tires, they can get all the information in advance, which is what they have right now. But I think from a standpoint of liability, I really don't see these companies like Roadster taking over half the business, where people are sitting at home eating a sandwich waiting for their car to be delivered. I think there'll be a percentage of that. And as far as online sales, I think, incrementally it's just going to go up, and as devices change, everyone is on smartphones. Who knows what's around the corner in 10 years or 20 years? As technology changes, it makes things easier for people to gather information. I think there's going to be a point where probably 100% of every car sale, the customer has been online. They've done the research, and, the question then will be just what percentage are submitting leads.
Well, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Folks, that's Greg Iverson. Greg, great interview.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day, and hello to everybody. Hope everybody's good out there.
All the best to you. He is the Internet BDC Marketing Director at Felix Chevrolet. I am Kelly Kleiman. This is the DealershipNews.com podcast, signing off for a Monday afternoon. Have a good day, everybody.